The night was quiet. A light snow fell. Nikolay Gadek crept through the frozen field, his breath misting in the cold air. His heart pounded in his chest, a drumbeat against the silence. Ahead, silhouetted against the pale sky, stood the gas metering station, a vital artery supplying Russian homes and industries. His target. Nikolay reached into his backpack, his fingers closing around the cold metal of the detonator. He took a deep breath, the metallic scent of explosives filling his nostrils. This was for Ukraine, for freedom, for revenge. He closed his eyes and pressed the button. A blinding flash, a deafening roar. The ground shuddered beneath his feet as a fireball erupted into the night sky, consuming the gas metering station in a maelstrom of fire and twisted metal. Nikolay didn't look back. He turned and ran, the echo of the explosion ringing in his ears. The attack sent shockwaves through Russia. It was a brazen act of sabotage, a direct assault on their energy infrastructure. The Kremlin vowed swift and brutal retribution. The hunt for the perpetrator was on. Nikolay Gadek wasn't always a saboteur. He was born in Germany, the son of Ukrainian immigrants. He grew up straddling two worlds, the ordered prosperity of Germany and the vibrant culture of his parents' homeland. He visited Ukraine often, forging deep bonds with his relatives and embracing the warmth and resilience of the Ukrainian people. Then came 2014. Russia annexed Crimea, a move that ignited a firestorm of anger and fear within Nikolay. He watched in horror as the conflict escalated, engulfing eastern Ukraine in a bloody war. The images of destruction, the stories of suffering, the plight of his relatives, it all fueled a burning rage within him. Nikolay felt compelled to act. He couldn't stand by idly while his ancestral homeland was being torn apart. He started small, donating money to Ukrainian relief organizations, attending protests, raising awareness amongst his friends and colleagues in Germany. But it wasn't enough. He needed to do more. The idea took root slowly, a dangerous seed in the fertile ground of his anger. He would strike back at Russia, target their vulnerabilities, make them pay for their aggression. He would become a shadow warrior, fighting for Ukraine from the shadows. Nikolay began researching explosives, studying bomb-making manuals online, experimenting with homemade devices in the secluded German countryside. He trained relentlessly, honing his skills, preparing himself for the dangerous path he had chosen. He knew the risks, he knew the consequences, but he was determined. His dual citizenship was both a blessing and a curse. It allowed him to move freely between Germany and Ukraine, to gather intelligence, to establish contacts. But it also made him a target, a potential double agent in the eyes of both sides. He had to tread carefully, always one step ahead of the authorities. He chose his first target carefully, the gas metering station in Kaliningrad. It was a symbol of Russian power, a vital link in their energy supply chain. An attack there would send a message, a clear signal that Russia was not invincible. He planned meticulously, studying maps, timing the patrols, identifying weaknesses in the security perimeter. After the Kaliningrad bombing, Nikolay went dark. He knew the authorities would be searching for him, their intelligence agencies working overtime to track him down. He lay low in Ukraine, sheltered by a network of sympathetic contacts, waiting for the heat to die down. But the desire for action still burned within him. He couldn't stay hidden forever. He had to strike again. This time, his target was a railway bridge in Poland, a crucial supply route for Russian troops in Belarus. He knew that disrupting their logistics would hamper their ability to wage war in Ukraine. He acquired more explosives, smuggled them across the border in a hidden compartment of his car. He felt the weight of their deadly potential every time he touched the steering wheel. This was no longer a game. This was real. People's lives were at stake, including his own. He reached the Polish border late at night. The air was thick with tension. Border guards, their faces grim, scrutinized every vehicle, their fingers hovering near their weapons. Nikolay felt a surge of adrenaline, a cold sweat prickling his skin. This was it, the point of no return.
Halt, papers please.
Nikolay handed over his documents, his heart pounding in his chest.
Purpose of your visit to Poland?
He took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. Nikolay thinking, "Stay calm, stay focused." He responded, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "Nikolay, just visiting family."
All right, you may proceed.
The guard handed back his papers and Nikolay drove on, the weight of his mission pressing down on him as he crossed into Poland.
The border guard, a burly man with a suspicious gaze, scrutinized Nikolay's passport. His eyes narrowed. "Step out of the car," he ordered.
Nikolay's heart pounded against his ribs. He had to stay calm. He had thought of this moment, rehearsed his response.
"Is there a problem, officer?" Nikolay asked, forcing a casual tone into his voice.
The guard didn't answer. He gestured towards the back of the car. "Open the trunk, please." Nikolay's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the keys. He prayed that the hidden compartment would hold. The guard watched his every move, his expression unreadable. The trunk creaked open, revealing a spare tire and some luggage. The guard approached the car, his hand resting on the butt of his pistol. He peered into the trunk, then used his flashlight to illuminate the dark recesses. Nikolay held his breath, his muscles tensed, ready to make a run for it. The guard straightened up. He seemed satisfied. Just as Nikolay thought he was in the clear, a second guard, younger and more alert, approached the car. He had been circling the vehicle, inspecting the undercarriage with a mirror on a long handle. He spoke rapidly to his colleague, pointing at something beneath the car. The first guard's eyes widened. He drew his weapon.
"Get down on your knees! Hands where I can see them!" the first guard barked, his gun trained on Nikolay.
Nikolay froze. He had been so close. He had almost made it, but now the game was up. He slowly raised his hands in surrender, his mind racing, desperately searching for an escape route. There was none. The second guard approached cautiously, keeping his distance, his gun drawn. He spoke into his radio, his voice urgent, reinforcements. Nikolay knew he had no chance against armed guards. He was outnumbered, outgunned, trapped. They dragged him out of the car, forcing him to the ground, the cold asphalt biting into his cheek. He felt the weight of their boots on his back, the cold steel of handcuffs clamping around his wrists. It was over. News of Nikolay's arrest spread like wildfire. The Polish authorities hailed it as a major victory, a testament to their vigilance against foreign threats. But for Nikolay, it was the beginning of a nightmare. He knew what awaited him: interrogation, imprisonment, perhaps even worse. The interrogation room was small and sparsely furnished. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting harsh shadows on the walls. Nikolay sat at the steel table, his hands cuffed in front of him. He was exhausted, hungry, and scared. He had refused to answer any questions, demanding to speak to a lawyer.
The door creaked open, and a man entered. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. He wore a plain suit, but his bearing exuded an air of authority. He introduced himself as Agent Kowalski, Polish intelligence. "We know who you are, Mr. Gadek," Kowalski said, his voice calm and measured. "We know what you were planning to do, and we know you didn't act alone."
Nikolay said nothing. He knew that Kowalski was trying to provoke him, to get him to talk. He would not give them the satisfaction.
"We have been tracking your movements for months," Kowalski continued. "We know about your contacts in Ukraine, your visits to Hamburg. We even know the name of your accomplice, Viktor Chernenko."
Nikolay's heart skipped a beat. They knew about Viktor. Viktor was his handler, his contact in the Ukrainian resistance. If they had him. News of other bombings began to surface. A fuel depot in Belarus went up in flames. A power station in Russia experienced a catastrophic failure. Each incident bore the hallmarks of Nikolay's handiwork, the signature of his training and expertise. But Nikolay was in custody. He hadn't ordered these attacks. Had he inspired something bigger than himself? Kowalski leaned forward, his eyes boring into Nikolay. "Your silence won't protect them, Mr. Gadek. We will find them. It's only a matter of time." Nikolay's mind raced. He had to warn Viktor, to alert the others. But how? He was cut off, isolated, a prisoner in a foreign land. He felt a surge of despair. Had his actions been in vain? Had he only made things worse? He looked at Kowalski, his face a mask of defiance. "You won't win," Nikolay said, his voice hoarse but firm. "There are more of us. We will fight for our freedom, for our homeland. You can't stop us all." Kowalski smiled coldly. "We'll see about that, Mr. Gadek. We'll see." Nikolay Gadek's case sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. It was a stark reminder of the invisible war being waged beneath the surface of everyday life. A conflict fought with whispers and shadows, sabotage and subterfuge. It highlighted the volatile mix of national identities, political allegiances, and personal motivations that fueled this new era of global unrest. As the investigation deepened, a complex web of connections emerged, linking Nikolay to a network of Ukrainian nationalists, former military officers, and disillusioned idealists scattered across Europe. They were united by a shared belief that Russia was an existential threat to Ukraine and the West, and that extraordinary measures were needed to combat them. The trial of Nikolay Gadek became an international spectacle, a flashpoint for geopolitical tensions. Russia demanded his extradition, accusing him of terrorism and waging a proxy war against them. Ukraine hailed him as a hero, a freedom fighter resisting Russian aggression. The world watched and waited. holding its breath, as the line between freedom fighter and terrorist blurred in the murky waters of international espionage.